Listen, people, I'm going to be very laid back today, almost by design. One, because it's a Friday and it's been a busy week. We'll talk about that week in just a few minutes and what maybe the week in the life of a mayor. I'll just run down the stops, the meetings, and then just kind of the life of putting yourself out there like this. I'll share it with you here in just a little bit. On one day, it's illegal to pay somebody to vote. But on the next day, being election day, it's legal to pay somebody to canvass. Even though they don't canvass, even though they don't go to a house, they hop on a bus, they go down, they vote, they come back, and they cash a $75 check. So the day before, it's illegal. The next day, completely legal, or at least enough gray area.
I think a lot of what that is they pay somebody $75 to go find 5 friends to take to the poll. Hey, here's $75. Sure. I want you to go over there. And
as long as you bring 5 friends that get a $75 check as well, Jack, you're exactly right. So gray that they don't even go after it to prosecute. Not this ethics guy I just talked about. I handed over the 65 $75 checks, banned out on the table, cashed at the same liquor store, deposited at the same thing. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, well, it was illegal yesterday, but today's election day, so it's called canvassing, and they can pay. They brought 5 friends. They hopped on a bus.
It's like ballot harvesting. On the right, we say, well, that can't be fair because it's you don't know where those ballots came from. But on the left, it's like, oh, well, what's wrong with it? As long as people get the vote, we need to get these votes in. Hey, getting these votes in is important. And I'm like, no, it's not.
And if you oppose it, Jack, you're suppressing.
I don't care. I am suppressing those votes because they're not. I am blatantly coming out right now and saying I think we should suppress the vote. I think suppressing the vote needs to be done because a lot of people who aren't allowed to vote are voting because we're making it too easy.
Jack has long thought that you should have to test the front door.
I think voting should be hard. I don't think it should be this easy. And I don't care if you think anything negative about me because I'm an old man and I'm going to die in the near future. So it doesn't matter what you think of me.
Yeah.
Colonel,
I have a political comment for the day. Okay, if you want to go to a Trump rally or go shopping or go out to eat or go to a ball game, you can't because you could spread the virus. But we'll welcome in tens of thousands of migrants in one big group, unchecked, from disease-ridden nations. Is this correct?
Colonel, I'm going to give you the 2 hot spots, and they actually call them the hot spots of the globe. It's Arizona and California.
Gee, I wonder why that is.
Well, I'm going to ask, what do they have in common? Large, massive, unchecked migrant populations.
And based on my work in the intelligence community for 14 years, including the national level, and my training in biochemical warfare, because I was a battalion biochemical warfare officer, this thing was engineered. This was not natural.
Agreed. Colonel, thank you.
I'll leave you with that.
No discussion. Very little at all, excuse me. Hitting the floor and symbolically impeaching him all over again in the House. Of course, it'll go nowhere. But from one discussion midweek last week by somebody who's a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat to this craziness that they're now talking about today. The man's out in a matter of, 8 days? Am I correct? Yes. Packing his bag, and now every speech sounds just like that, concession, and it'll be a peaceful transition, and we'll take him at his word. But to do the dog and pony show that they're going to try and do today, and I think and if you catch some of the talking heads, Pelosi and the rest of them, they're in a big hurry to do it. I think that's a massive mistake, and that's me inside myself saying it. That's me stepping outside myself and saying it. Wrong, and wrong again on about 50 fronts. If you can't see that, then you're not that big person that can. And then another bunch of preachers condemning it. I expect forgiveness from them first and foremost. So let's go. Let's move on. Put the blinders on. Look forward. Look forward to what you think the country will look like. And you're not whatever they're about to do. I don't get it.
And so
that is why the Democrat Party doesn't have any quality people. They do not. They do not have one quality person in the Democratic Party. They're all either trolls or scumbags, like this Ossoff character. He is horrible. I don't know how he got elected.
So not true. There's not true. The ones that seem to lead or be the most visible are the most bizarre. Absolutely. But there are some solid people standing over there. I don't know why
they're not in leadership positions.
Correct.
The fact is that happens in every election. Now, they don't go by the number of dead people who voted. They go by, did this sway the election left or right? Did it do one way or the other?
They walked away from what was an argument.
That's why whenever you hear a news report, they say there's no evidence of they don't say there's no evidence of election fraud. They say there's no evidence of widespread, that's the word, that's the key word, widespread election fraud, which actually there is.
And to both of you opposed, the only prosecution of any fraud whatsoever has been out of Texas. Am I correct? That one lady who
got a slap on the wrist.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ballots.
And she'll get a slap on the wrist and a reduced sentence at some point. So what's really even worse about it is the judges. Judges do not want. They do not want these cases coming before them. That's why it didn't go to the Supreme Court. That's why it keeps getting thrown out. They say, "Oh, they don't even want to look at the evidence," and that's what's so sad about it. They don't want to look at the evidence. No, I don't even want to start on there. We're not going to go there.
Yep, because we had the same thing in Brooks County in 2010 when they had the voter fraud.
Yeah, I remember when that happened.
The judges kept throwing it out, or they actually kept causing mistrial.
They call it mistrial or recusing themselves. So what they do, they recuse themselves. They have to get another judge. Oh, I don't want to look at this case. That's basically what they're saying is, I don't want to be involved in this case. Why? I don't know.
Makes the whole election dubious, and you throw in the machines too. So anyhow, that was something that's been bothering me. I'm just somebody needs to be accountable, and they finds a judge with kahunas put some people in jail for it.
All right, thanks, Colin.
Several organizations are calling for Valdosta Mayor Scott James Matheson to be removed from office immediately.
Now, this comes after the groups filed an ethics complaint against him. WAOB News 10's Jennifer Moorjohn joins us live with more.
It all started with some comments made on Mayor Matheson's radio show. A group of people claim it violates the code of ethics for city officials. Take a listen.
On one day, it's illegal to pay somebody to vote. But on the next day, being election day, it's legal to pay somebody to canvass, even though they don't canvass.
These are clips from Mayor Scott James Matheson's weekday morning radio talk show on 92.1 on January 12th.
Well, I'm going to ask, what do they have in common? Large, massive, unchecked migrant populations.
His comments accusing Democrats of illegal voter canvassing during last month's state Senate races and about immigrants causing COVID-19 spikes are now at the center of an ethics complaint against him.
It did not in any way make us look good as a city. And if we stand by and don't do anything at all, then what does that say about us as a city?
Pastor Darren Neal is the president of NAACP Lounge Valdosta chapter, one of 3 local organizations spearheading the complaint. He also was a canvasser during the January elections and helped drive voters to the polls. He says Matheson's words are painful for the community.
I must say that I am personally hurt by it. I'm extremely hurt by the comment. We went to great efforts to make sure that every person had the opportunity to vote.
According to the ethics complaint, Mayor Matheson and his co-host claimed the large Democratic voter turnout was because votes were bought with financial support the Democrats provided for campaign canvassers. Those comments were also why the Mary Turner Project joined the ethics complaint.
I think we have to have a serious conversation about the impact that media outlets like the mayor's has on the community, as well as what does it mean that an elected official is running the media outlet and making these claims and is never held accountable.
Mark George is the coordinator of Mary Turner Project. He says the groups asked to speak with the mayor about his comments, but Mayor Matheson refused. According to the complaint, the groups claim the mayor violated at least 6 of the core values in City of Valdosta's Code of Ethics for elected officials. Those values include being independent, impartial, and responsible to the people and using power of his position for the well-being of their constituents.
So I think I'm hoping the city council does the right thing. I hope they take this complaint seriously. And I think unless we do that, how do we come together as a community? I mean, that is the ultimate goal, to have a community that's healthy and good for everybody, that's inclusive, and not just, we don't want to contribute to the divide that's already tearing the country and some of our communities apart.
I reached out to the city for a comment from the mayor and was told the city's attorney is currently reviewing the complaint and they cannot comment at the moment. I'll continue to follow this story. We'll keep you updated with the latest developments. In Valdosta, Jennifer Moore-John, WAOB News 10.
Well, the Valdosta Ethics Board met today to discuss the complaint against Mayor Scott James Matheson. A group says he violated city ethics codes in his radio show comments. WAOB News 10's Jennifer Moore-John joins us live with details from today's meeting.
Carla, today was the first time that committee met, and it was more like a planning session. The mayor was not present, but one of the complainants was.
It doesn't have to be as formal as a trial, but it needs to have just pretty right call witness, right submit evidence, right cross-examine.
Former Lowndes County Solicitor General Richard Shelton, former Judge Jim Tennyson, and Robert Jefferson joins City Attorney Tim Tanner. Members of some groups the mayor allegedly spoke about on his show were there. They didn't want to comment, but tell me they plan to speak at the next hearing. Coordinator of Mary Turner Project, Mark George, took part in making the complaint.
Today we were set up to basically fail. They're going to assess our complaint on the prohibitions listed in the Code of Ethics, which cover things like extortion or embezzlement or hiring your family, kind of nepotism. We're not alleging that the mayor did any of that. On the first page of the Code of Ethics, we're alleging that the mayor violated the spirit of the very Code of Ethics.
George says he wasn't expecting much from this meeting. He says he's not heard from the mayor.
I think if nothing else, the public will know who the Mayor of Valdosta is, that he has said a number of things that implicate a large percentage of his constituents that he didn't think were wrong at all. He's offered no apology.
The Ethics Board set the next hearing for April 14th at 10 a.m. Both parties will be allowed to take the stand. They can present proof and have witnesses speak as well. The case will be dismissed if it's not deemed credible. If it is, a second hearing will be scheduled. The city attorney, the ethics committee, and Mayor Matheson could not comment. We'll continue to follow this story in Valdosta. Jennifer Moore-John, WAOB News 10.
Well, today we are learning how Valdosta Mayor Scott James Matheson is responding to a complaint filed against him. A group claims he violated the city's ethics code. WALB News 10's Jennifer Moore-John joins us live with the new developments.
Carla, in the written statement from the mayor, he says he did nothing wrong, and those who filed the complaint had a lot to say about that.
I think we're pretty disappointed.
Mark Patrick George, coordinator of the Mary Turner Project, one of the 3 local organizations making that complaint, says he's not surprised. The complaint sent early this month claims Mayor Scott James Matheson violated a few ethics standards under the city's ordinance while speaking on his radio talk show. The mayor says the complaint fails to set out even one act by him that violates the ethics code. He says it's an attempt to use the ethics code to publicize political criticism and differences of opinion of the accusers.
It's pretty clear that if you read the Code of Ethics for the city of Valdosta, the whole first page is about being unbiased.
Pastor Darren Neal, president of the NAACP Lowndes County chapter, says he just wants to speak to Matheson, but he refuses to respond.
I'd like to see the mayor of Valdosta make an attempt to heal the people of this community.
In the statement, Mayor Matheson says he plans to keep working for all of Valdosta and continue to move the city forward, serving all equally. I tried to reach out to the mayor over email, phone, and text, and give him the opportunity for an interview, but I didn't hear back. Those that filed the complaint gave me a copy of the mayor's statement, but not Matheson himself. George tells me next in the process, the city will form an ethics committee who will investigate the allegations and then report back to the city council. It appears that is on the agenda for next week. If you would like to read the full complaint, you can find it over on WAOB.com. I will continue to follow this story. We'll keep you updated with the latest developments. In Valdosta, Jennifer Moore-John, WAOB News 10.
Good evening. I am Pastor Bruce Francis, the servant leader of the St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church located in the city of Valdosta, Georgia. I come before you tonight to make this statement in regards to the ethics complaint and to share with you my concerns as it relates to the ethics complaint that was filed against Mayor Scott James Matheson of Valdosta, Georgia by several organizations in our community. These organizations are the NAACP, the Mary Turner Project, the Valdosta Lowndes County Community Action, and the concerned clergies of Valdosta. After the meeting on April 1st, 2021 of the Ethics Committee, it appears that the entire Code of Ethics is not being used in consideration to determine if the mayor has violated these ethical codes. The Ethics Committee, who will be reviewing the complaint, was only given the 3rd section of Code of Ethics that deal with the criminal part of this code. Our complaint has never been a criminal complaint. We have never accused the mayor of any criminal offense. Our charges are based upon the 1st section of the Code of Ethics, which states, whereas the governing body deems it essential to the proper operation of democratic government that the public officials be and give the appearance of being independent, impartial, and responsible to the people, that governmental decisions and policies be made in the proper channels of the government structure, and that public office not be used for personal gain. And whereas the members of the governing authority feel that all elected officials of the city of Valdosta should conduct themselves so as to not create any question or concern as to the appropriateness, legality, or sincerity of any actions or conduct as a member of the governing authority. And whereas such measures are necessary to provide the public with confidence in the integrity of its government. Therefore, based upon the City of Valdosta Code of Ethics from Section 1, the Mayor of Valdosta, Mr. Matheson, has violated its own Code of Ethics. As a concerned clergy member, we ask that all city officials be held accountable by the same Code of Ethics that have been used in times past when other city employees were suspended for a violation of the moral Code of Ethics. The question is not, did the mayor violate the Code of Ethics from a criminal perspective, but rather, did the mayor violate the Code of Ethics from a moral and civil perspective? The concerned clergies of Valdosta ask that the Ethics Committee do not review our complaint from a criminal perspective, because that's not what it is. You must consider the whole Code of Ethics. If the whole Code of Ethics is not used in this complaint, it sends a message that certain parts of the Valdosta Code of Ethics only applies to whomever, whenever it is deemed necessary and needed to suit their need. As I close, the late Nelson Mandela once said, "Great leaders are not merely effective, they are ethical. Moral principles guide their purposes and practices. People follow them because they believe in them. Great leaders engender trust in their integrity, their competence, and their intentions." With this in mind, Mayor Matheson, consider the statements that you have made over your radio broadcasts that were unfair, that were unsupported by any real evidence, and literally harmful to you, as you should in your office as mayor of the city of Valdosta be seeking ways to build unity in this city and county instead of sowing seeds of dissent. And with this in mind, I say to those who have been handpicked by a contingency that did not include input or opportunity to participate in the Ethics Committee selection process, that you, the members of this committee, consider your responsibility, and that is to be fair, to be impartial, and to consider all of the evidence, and thus render the right decision. We, the members of the concerned clergy of Valdosta, the Mary Turner Project, the NAACP, and the Lowndes Valdosta Community Action Group, and the entire city of Valdosta, which you represent, are looking for you, Mr. Mayor, and for you, the Ethics Committee, on this Wednesday to do the right thing. Again, I am Bruce Francis, the servant leader of St. Paul African Methodist Episcopal Church in the city of Valdosta. Thank you for your time and your consideration. God bless you.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Ronnie Matheson. I am the senior pastor of the Crossing Jordan Baptist Church here in the city of Valdosta, Georgia. I'm also a proud member of the concerned clergies of Valdosta, Georgia. I come before you today to share my concerns as it relates to the ethic complaint that was filed against Mayor Scott James Matheson of Valdosta by several organizations in our community. Those organizations are the NAACP, the Mary Turner Organization, the Valdosta Lowndes Action Group, and the concerned clergies of Valdosta. It was after the meeting on April 1st, 2021 of the Ethics Committee, it appears that the entire Code of Ethics is not being used in consideration to determine if the mayor has violated the Code of Ethics. The Ethics Committee who will be reviewing the complaint, was only given the third section of the Code of Ethics that deals with the criminal part of the Code of Ethics. Our complaint has never been a criminal complaint. We've never accused the mayor of any criminal offense. Our charges are based upon the first section of the Code of Ethics, which states, I quote, whereas the governing authority deem it essential to the proper operation of democratic government that the public officials be and give the appearance of being independent, impartial, and responsible to the people, that government decisions and policies be made in the proper channels of the governmental structure, and that public office not be used for personal gain. And whereas the members of the governing authority feel that all elected officials of the city of Valdosta should conduct themselves so as to not create any questions or concerns as to the appropriateness, legality, or sincerity of any actions or conduct as a member of the governing authority. And whereas such measures are necessary to provide the public with confidence and the integrity of its government. Therefore, based upon the City of Valdosta Code of Ethics, from Section 1, the mayor of Valdosta has violated its own Code of Ethics. As a concerned clergy, we ask that all city officials be held accountable by the same Code of Ethics that have been used in time past when other city employees were suspended for a violation of moral code of ethics. The question is not, did the mayor violate the code of ethics from a criminal perspective, but rather did the mayor violate the code of ethics from a moral and civil perspective? The concerned clergy of Valdosta asked the Ethics Committee, do not review our complaint from a criminal perspective because it's not. You must, and I repeat, you must consider the whole code of ethics. If the whole code of ethics is not used in this complaint, it sends a message that certain parts of the Valdosta Code of Ethics only applies to whomever, whenever is needed. Thank you, and may God bless you.
The Valdosta Ethics Complaint Board voted 2-1 today to dismiss complaints the NAACP and others filed against Mayor Scott Matheson. In part, the complaint says the mayor made disparaging racial comments on his self-titled radio show and that he fails to give the appearance of being impartial and unbiased. The board dismissed the claims on the basis of free speech, adding that Matheson did not directly violate any ethical policies. Many of those who supported the complaints walked out after hearing the dismissal, still unsatisfied with the decision.
I'd like to see a deeper investigation. I'd like to see, first of all, a panel that is not set up for Mathis to win. I would like to see more people that would look at the facts, look at it from a non-biased, non-political standpoint, and then begin to make a fair judgment. And that's all I want. But with his comments, it cannot be tolerated.
The Ethics Complaint Board will present their ruling before the City Council for them to accept within 7 days.
I'm Jim Wallace.
And I'm Carla B. Sands. The Ethics Board Committee voted today to dismiss the complaint against Valdosta's mayor, Scott James Matheson. A group claims he violated the city's ethics code in comments he made on his radio show.
WALB News 10's Jennifer Moore-John was there. She joins us live with the details out of that hearing.
Jim, things were a little intense this morning and definitely took a turn in the beginning, but the committee took about 2 hours to decide to dismiss this complaint. Take a look. Soon after the hearing began, one of the complainants, Mark George, tells the board they were deciding based on the wrong section in the ordinance. The ethics board immediately concluded the hearing and asked everyone to step out as they reviewed.
It frustrates me. We're concerned about the moral issues on the first page, whether
that we expecting justice and equality under the law, and we are determined that we are going to make sure that justice prevails.
2 hours later, a decision was made to dismiss. Each board member gave their reasoning. Jim Tennyson, one of the ethics board members, says city officials are not restricted from freedom of expression, speech, or censored political speech. He commented about Frederick Douglass, which angered the crowd, and they walked out of the room.
And I feel what the mayor did when speaking on his radio show was okay as long as he did say, as the mayor.
Board member Robert Jefferson says when in office, a mayor must speak about everyone equally, something he says Matheson didn't do on his show. He says he feels some behaviors need to change. Jefferson says the lack of trust is not enough to fire Matheson.
I listen to everybody. I talk with everybody. I am sorry if the difference of opinion rated them going this far. But
Mayor Scott James Matheson tells me he's relieved. He's glad this is behind him and ready to move forward. The complainants say this was a decision they expected but didn't want. They say the fight is not over.
City Council needs to decide whether they think it's appropriate for the mayor of Valdosta to use his 15 hours of conservative talk radio to speak for the city and to speak as the mayor and speak for the city. All they have to do is say no more.
Dividing is not what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to bring it together. That's one of the main things that we're trying to do. We're trying to bridge the gap. We're trying to bring whites, black, Hispanic. We're trying to bring everybody together so everybody can sit at the same table.
The committee's decision will be presented to City Council sometime next week, and then it will all be over. If you would like to listen to the recordings or read any of the documents involved in this case, you can find those on our website, WAOB.com. In Valdosta, Jennifer Moore-John, WAOB News 10.
Valdosta's Ethics Board has voted to dismiss the complaint against Mayor Scott James Matheson. The group filed a complaint in February saying Matheson violated the city's ethics code in his radio show comments. After about 2 hours, all three committee members voted to dismiss. Now, the committee originally said the mayor had violated Section 3 in the ordinance for criminal offenses, but they were interrupted by one of the complainants with the correct ordinance. After that, the crowd was asked to step out, and that left many angry.
I feel that there has been a loss of trust. Now, is that loss of trust is something that I feel we should throw the mayor out of office because of? No. But I do feel that there's some behavior that needs to be changed.
Coming up at 6, we're going to hear from the community, and for the first time, the mayor himself on this objection to his radio show comments. That's tonight on WLB News 10.
Facebook family. I'm just reeling in from a tumultuous morning, as you will see from the news clips from earlier today at the City Hall ethics complaint hearing. I'm, along with so many other concerned clergy and other groups that met this morning, are disillusioned by the decision of the Ethics Committee to dismiss our complaint against the mayor, Scott Matheson, and his behavior and his egregious words that he reverberated repeatedly on his morning radio program, which is a radio station that he personally owns. He uses this platform as his a political platform as the mayor. He speaks as the mayor of Valdosta on his show. And his co-hosts, along with he, have said things that have really caused concern and that really caused us to want to call him into question concerning his behavior from a moral perspective, not criminal. And as you've seen from the news clips that you see on my page, he says that he has spoken or will speak to everyone. Well, he refused to speak to us. We, as a group, approached him. We had individual members of our organization to call him to have a conversation before the complaint was even filed, and he refused to have a conversation with us. Therefore, it left us no other alternative but to file a formal ethics complaint. And that's all it was. And that's all it ever has been. It has never been from a criminal perspective, which the Ethics Committee, as you've seen again from the news clip, was actually weighing in on our complaint from that angle of the ethics code. And they forfeited, as you saw Dr. Mark George present our evidence that we based our claim upon, which they had none of that in their possession. It's as though they just totally just took all of that out of the ethics code, and they did not weigh in on a moral charge against the mayor. Therefore, from a legal perspective, which two of the committee members are attorneys, and they weighed in from that from a legal perspective. They as well had their attorney, the city attorney there. Our attorney, we did retain an attorney out of Atlanta, but she had court today, so she could not attend. She forwarded a letter to ask for a continuance of this ethics complaint hearing today, and to postpone it for 10 days so that she could familiarize herself with the case. But they earlier this morning decided not to do so. And of course, as you have heard, they have made the decision to dismiss our complaint against the mayor. I spoke earlier with some of the organization members, and also we were texting our emotions and feelings about today's hearing, which I don't know why they called it a public hearing, because they didn't even hear the public. They allowed no one to say anything at all, period. When they walked in the room, they had already made their decision. they did not actually weigh the evidence. They didn't even allow any to be presented. They made a decision. And I won't go any further of how they arrived at that decision, but just look at the video and then you'll figure out and be able to put the pieces together.
Oh, listen, people, I'm going to be very laid back today, almost by design. One, because it's a Friday and it's been a busy week. We'll talk about that week in just a few minutes and what maybe the week in the life of a mayor. I'll just run down the stops, the meetings, and then just kind of the life of putting yourself out there like this. I'll share it with you here in just a little bit. On one day, it's illegal to pay somebody to vote. But on the next day, being election day, it's legal to pay somebody to canvass. Even though they don't canvass, even though they don't go to a house, they hop on a bus, they go down, they vote, they come back, and they cash a $75 check. So the day before, it's illegal. The next day, completely legal, or at least enough gray area.
I think a lot of what that is they pay somebody $75 to go find 5 friends to take to the poll. Hey, here's $75. Sure. I want you to go over there. And
as long as you bring 5 friends, they get a $75 check as well, Jack. You're exactly right. So gray that they don't even go after it to prosecute. Not this ethics guy I just talked about. I handed over the 65 $75 checks, banned out on the table, cashed at the same liquor store, deposited at the same thing. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, well, it was illegal yesterday, but today's election day, so it's called canvassing. And they can pay. They brought 5 friends. They hopped on a bus.
It's like ballot harvesting. On the right, we say, well, that can't be fair because it's you don't know where those ballots came from. But on the left, it's like, oh, well, what's wrong with it? As long as people get the vote, we need to get these votes in. Hey, getting these votes in is important. And I'm like, no, it's not.
And if you oppose it, Jack, you're suppressing.
I don't care. I am suppressing those votes because they're not. I am blatantly coming out right now and saying I think we should suppress the vote. I think suppressing the vote needs to be done because a lot of people who aren't allowed to vote are voting because we're making it too easy.
Jack has long thought that you should have to test the front door.
I think voting should be hard. I don't think it should be this easy. And I don't care if you think anything negative about me because I'm an old man and I'm going to die in the near future. So it doesn't matter what you think of me.
Colonel,
I have a political comment for the day. Okay, if you want to go to a Trump rally or go shopping or go out to eat or go to a ball game, you can't because you could spread the virus. But we'll welcome in tens of thousands of migrants in one big group, unchecked, from disease-ridden nations. Is this correct?
Colonel, I'm going to give you the 2 hot spots, and they actually call them the hot spots of the globe. It's Arizona and California.
Gee, I wonder why that is.
Well, I'm going to ask, what do they have in common? Large, massive, unchecked migrant populations.
And based on my work in the intelligence community for 14 years, including the national level, and my training in biochemical warfare, because I was a battalion biochemical warfare officer, this thing was engineered. This was not natural.
Agreed. Colonel, thank you.
I'll leave you with that.
No discussion. Very little at all, excuse me. Hitting the floor and symbolically impeaching him all over again in the House. Of course, it'll go nowhere. But from one discussion midweek last week by somebody who's a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat to this craziness that they're now talking about today. The man's out in a matter of, what, 8 days. Am I correct? Yes. Packing his bag, and now every speech sounds just like that, concession, and it'll be a peaceful transition, and we'll take him at his word. But to do the dog and pony show that they're going to try and do today, and I think you know, and if you catch some of the talking heads, Pelosi and the rest of them, they're in a big hurry to do it. I think that's a massive mistake, and that's me inside myself saying it. That's me stepping outside myself and saying it. Wrong, and wrong again on about 50 fronts. If you can't see that, then you're not that big person that can. And then another bunch of preachers condemning it. I expect forgiveness from them first and foremost. So let's go. Let's move on. Put the blinders on. Look forward. Look forward to what you think the country will look like. And you're not whatever they're about to do. I don't get it.
And so that is why the Democrat Party doesn't have any quality people. They do not. They do not have one quality person in the Democratic Party. They're all either trolls or scumbags like this Ossoff character. He is horrible. I don't know how he got elected.
So not true. There's not true. The ones that seem to lead or be the most visible are the most bizarre. Absolutely. But there are some solid people standing over there. I don't know why
they're not in leadership positions.
Correct.
The fact is that happens in every election. Now, they don't go by the number of dead people who voted. They go by, did this sway the election left or right? Did it do one way or the other?
They walked away from what was an argument.
That's why whenever you hear a news report, they say there's no evidence of they don't say there's no evidence of election fraud. They say there's no evidence of widespread, that's the word, that's the key word, widespread election fraud, which actually there is.
And to both of you opposed, the only prosecution of any fraud whatsoever has been out of Texas. Am I correct? That one lady who
got a slap on the wrist.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ballots.
And she'll get a slap on the wrist and a reduced sentence at some point. So what's really even worse about it is the judges. Judges do not want. They do not want these cases coming before them. That's why it didn't go to the Supreme Court. That's why it keeps getting thrown out. They say, "Oh, they don't even want to look at the evidence," and that's what's so sad about it. They don't want to look at the evidence. And no, I don't even want to start on there. We're not going to go there.
Yep, because we had the same thing in Brooks County in 2010 when they had the voter fraud.
Yeah, I remember when that happened.
The judges kept throwing it out, or they actually kept causing mistrial.
They call it mistrial or recusing themselves. So what they do, they recuse themselves. They have to get another judge. Oh, I don't want to look at this case. That's basically what they're saying is, I don't want to be involved in this case. Why? I don't know.
Makes the whole election dubious, and you throw in the machines too, so. Anyhow, that was something that's been bothering me, I'm just, somebody needs to be accountable, and they find a judge with whom is put some people in jail for it.
All right, thanks, Colin.
June 2016, so summer before the presidential election. That's when we first learned that the Democratic National Committee, Democratic Party, had been hacked. This was the first story that ran about it in the Washington Post, which also helpfully made clear, based on a forensic analysis that was done by a computer security firm, that it appeared that that hack of the Democratic Party was carried out by Russian government hackers. Well before the disaster of Georgia election security in the 2016 election. In his first full year as Secretary of State in 2010, he sent armed agents door to door in black neighborhoods in Brooks County, Georgia. This was after a big get out the vote effort there among black residents. That big get out the vote effort led to the first ever majority African-American school board in their town. Local residents said they'd been motivated that year by teacher layoffs in their school district, teacher layoffs that were really unpopular. And according to one local leader of the voter registration effort, quote, "We'd been bit by the Obama bug." This was 2010. We'd been bit by the Obama bug, and we knew it was time for a change in Brooks County as well. They brought criminal charges against 12 local black residents who'd helped in the Get Out the Vote effort. They brought charges against those 12 residents for things like bringing envelopes containing completed absentee ballots to a mailbox. They criminally charged this group of local residents with more than 100 election law violations, including dozens of felonies. They put them on trial to face more than 1,000 combined years in prison. And you know what? Not a single one of those charges held up. On every single one of those charges, the local resident was either acquitted or the charge had to be dropped by the prosecutors. Not only were there no convictions, there weren't even any plea deals. Acquitted or dropped on every single one. And the Attorney General of the state subsequently had to issue a statement clarifying that actually none of the actions those African-American local residents in Brooks County had been charged with, none of the things they were charged with were actually illegal. Mailing in absentee ballots is not a crime. Registering your neighbors to vote is not a crime. But tell that to the people who Brian Kemp sent his armed agents door to door after in 2010. That's Brian Kemp, Georgia Secretary of State.
Myself from any activity with the board until you get that straight.
What are you doing?
I'll be glad to give you an affidavit or a statement or whatever, but until that gets, settled, I don't want anybody thinking that, we're trying to do anything underhanded or above,
I understand that, Ken. I understand it, but as a board member, we have to look into it or have someone look into it.
I understand.
So that's where it has to go from there. It needs to be looked into because I don't want that to fall back in my lap.
So, in essence, then I need to suspend myself from any activity with the elections office until that gets settled.
What are you doing?
Excuse me, y'all. I was asked a question, and I'd like to respond to you because I am recording. What I'm doing is that I'm recording.
You know what? You should not be doing that without informing us ahead of time.
Okay, let me. You asked me a question. I want to answer, if you allow me. Will you let me answer my question?
Go ahead.
If this is indeed a public meeting, I have a right to do this. It has been proven over and over again in the courts. I go all to these cities, Lakeland, all around. This is what I do. So I'm just recording a public meeting. Now, if what is being discussed would have been determined by you, the chairman, or whoever, if it's possible for you all to go in an executive session to discuss your matters, which I think maybe should have been there, then I know the procedures, and I definitely would not try to come in that executive. But if it's a public meeting, I have a right to record and to the court.
He's right.
And so
Okay,
so when you ask, so I just answered your question, and that's my point.
All right. Well, we are going to call an executive session at this point. The rest of the meeting is adjourned.
That's not a big deal.
Okay.
So in order to executive session, you have to state the reason for it. There's only 3 reasons you can go into it. You have to have a motion to go into it. You have to tell us the reason you're going into it. And then when we come back, you have to tell us what was discussed. So.
And there must be a
If it's
vote on it.
executive session, anything other than that is sunshine.
Okay, so go ahead. What else? I just am feeling very threatened at this point and very just picked on and torn apart for people who have worked so hard trying to put something good together.
Because we want someone who loves our children, who want to make a difference in our community. That's right. It's not because we did something wrong. We just want something. We want a change. We want something better for our kids. Because Prince County is made up of black kids. So who is best to go in our school system to teach our children and let them know that you can be somebody. You can be a barber. You can be a doctor. You can be a lawyer. You can be the best that you know how to be. You don't have to go to McDonald's and work. All right, then. You don't have to go to the city of equipment and then they teach us. You can be the best that you can be. That's right. So why are you all making us feel like we are criminals because we want the best for our children? I'm sorry, y'all, but I get very emotional. I don't want to think about what they did to us. If I don't talk about it, it's like a dream. But when I talk about it, it's reality. I had never been to jail. I had never had handcuffs on my arms. And that hurts. That hurts. People don't realize. They're standing by looking at us. They don't realize how this hurt us. Dogs go to jail with handcuffs on us. And people think like, people know us. People know who we are. And how you dare them that we are criminals. It's hard, y'all. It's hard. It's hard. People looking at you that he did something wrong when you know he did something wrong. I'm sorry. Come on. I thank y'all. I thank y'all for being here with us. I just thank God, God bless you for one of y'all. Continue to support us, so we really need y'all. We had never anything wrong. All we want to make a difference in our community. That's all we wanted. That's all we wanted.
Is a miscarriage of justice in the state of Georgia that cannot be overlooked. The Secretary of State and the Governor have made it very purposeful that they will send the message that if you are African American and if you run for office and if you honestly win the election, you will be punished. The Governor, the Secretary of State are trying to intimidate and suppress the African American vote since they know if the 400,000 registered African Americans in the state of Georgia that did not vote in the last election cycle come out and exercise a right that people have died for, the right to vote. If the African American community and all people of color exercise their constitutional right to vote, it will mean the demise of this white privileged aristocracy here in Georgia. That is not American. That is not worthy of the state of Georgia. This prosecution is a travesty. The prosecutors, the Secretary of State, the Governor should be called out on what they have done to these women and called to publicly apologize for the 4 years that they have put them under this scrutiny and this character assassination. So that's
once again, we must thank Shaveen King. We must also thank Mr. Dennard for doing an outstanding job all the way. The NAACP has been here all the way. This is, of course, Lula Smart. All that she has been through, she violated no law. And if they had not stood their grounds, if they had plea bargained, we wouldn't have had this day. This case just may set a precedent here in Georgia and in the United States of America. This is a very high day, and we just hope that some conclusion can come to the other people that have been charged in what we believe was either a conspiracy or retaliation for Black African Americans dominating the Brooks County School Board of Education. This is the mother right here. And we want to thank, oh my God, God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you. That's Diane Thomas. She's one of the quick 10 plus 2.
That's what I'm saying.
We're so thankful. So thankful. How you doing today? What do you want to say about it?
Oh, I just thank God. Thank God for this day that we've been waiting on for 5 weeks, 4 years. I just thank God that justice was done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We can see that this is a very high point. Look at the young lady here. She's rejoicing. Excuse me. Lula Smart.
It's a wonderful
You may not understand this, but you don't have to see when people are innocent is when they hear people lie on the stand. They say that she dropped ballots in a box. She said she didn't. She said that Amy Braswell, of the special agent of G.B.R, did not put the tape recorder on her desk as she testified under oath. Mr. Boone testified that she put bundles of ballots in the drop boxes outside of the post office. Apparently the jury just did not buy it. We also have the one pastor that has been all the way, hugging Diane Thomas. He marched with us. He protested with us. He cried with us. He wept with us. He wept with the football team all the way. This is a high day, and what is most embarrassing? There's not one TV station, no news media, no newspaper, no radio station to record this historic event. This is what Black African Americans must go through. Not to mention Secretary of State ignoring public meetings wherein all of this was brought up. The rejoicing. She praising God because she is a Christian. She is nothing what they claim her to be. She just praising God. Listen. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Praise his holy name. He's worthy to be praised. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Yes, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Praise his holy name. He's worthy to be praised. Thank you, Jesus.
I see angels every
made mothers to be angels. You just might be looking at an angel right now. If you're in Los Angeles, California, Nashville, Tennessee, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri, Chicago, heaven must be around the corner.
There are ups and downs, and I think we've had more ups and downs if you really think about it. 4.5 years, but and the support. I'm one of 5 kids. I have 4 brothers. I never had sisters. I joined a sorority, but I never had sisters like this, to be this close. And in the middle of the night, we had to lean on each other. We cry on each other because only we understood or understand the feeling of being arrested together. You wake up one morning and you're planning Christmas. You're planning your holidays, and you're all in jail together. We're looking around and never having, other than probably a speeding ticket, never having any involvement with law enforcement, that it just kind of threw us into this different setting, a different mindset, that now that every time you pull up my name, I've got an arrest record. I've got, when I apply for anything, renewal of my teacher certificate, I've got to explain why I've got this hold by the G.B.R. on me. And the thing about it was, there were so many levels that they could have arrested us under. We could have been under the level where it wouldn't have shown up, because there was no indictment at that time, there was no conviction, there was no trial, there was just allegations of something. Right. But they chose to put us on the highest. We're probably on, we can't even travel out of the country. Can't get passports, 4 years in hold. All these things that we can't do. And every time we apply for something, it pops up. The simplest things. And to be thrown from, just everyday Joe citizen to that type of eyes on you, everybody knows you, that you have an FBI file now. When you call the State Department, all these things pop up, these red flags. But like I said, that's fine too, because we'll get all that cleared up. We're positive all that will be cleared up too. But it was our time. It was a time in the nation, in the state, and even in Brooks County, that all these things need to be brought to the forefront. And I guess, God knew when He chose us. We have all very, very different personalities, and we have different approaches to getting things done. But it put us together and it made that connection, and because of that and the individual strengths that we had, we've been able to stay together this long. And I also have a wonderful legal team. Anybody has ever heard of C.B. King, but you've got to meet him. I mean, he's just yes. He's more than just an attorney. He's a mentor. He's somebody, I remember we got arrested on the 21st. 21st. I remember on the morning of the 23rd. No, it was Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve morning. My son was on his way home from college, and I was trying to prepare a little holiday in the midst of all this. And I opened up I went out and got the newspaper and opened it up, and we were on the front page. And the yellow jumpsuits all over again, and relived it again. And I had an awful moment that morning. And this is before 8 o'clock in the morning. I called him, and his wife was running around in the house trying to find him. She said, I'll have him call you back. And he called me back, and the first thing I hate to disturb your holiday. And he says, oh, I want to take 1 day off. I want to take Christmas off. And he says, what is it, Nancy? And I just, just broke down and just said, here it goes again. And he says, well, get prepared. He says, get prepared. And he gave me this big pep talk. And what did he tell me, Keisha?
Faith and fear cannot occupy the same space at the same time.
Go ahead.
He said, and you choose now, Nancy. Because I was just having this moment, and he listened and all that. And he says, wait a minute. He said, faith and fear cannot occupy the same space at the same time. He said, now you choose now. And something went over me, and I closed that paper, and I said, I got faith. I got faith. And that thing forward, it's like, I wrote down.
Al Sharpton, we need you. Victor Blackwell, we need you. President Barack Obama, we need you in Brooks County. We need you. Oh yes, we need you. And Eric Holder of the Justice Department, you have been given videos, and you know what it's all about.
I could not be in the courtroom. They sent a motion down and said that I could not be in the courtroom. You know, first it was I couldn't sit with the legal team. Then I could not be in the courtroom. And we went back and forth. And for the first, was it about 3 hours of opening session, they had to be in close quarters with the judge arguing that. And then he says, well, I'll make a decision. I'll rule on that after the jury selection. So we had to wait till the third day to decide whether I could even be in court to provide information. But C.B. had already told me that week before. He says, you know what? It's like this. If I go to play a football team, you're not going to wait till I get there and tell me my lead running back isn't going to play. He said, that's just not going to happen. And I said, okay. I told him, I said, okay. He said his lead running back's going to play. And I said, so that's what we're going to go with. And it played out just like he said, because he was just that headstrong. But like I said, there were so many obstacles that the general public and what you did see, little bits and pieces of the paper, didn't truly report. It was people like Deacon Rice and Commissioner Maxwell and Miss Rice and Cody and George Rhymes, those that came on a daily basis. They could see the ups and downs and how we were having good days and bad days and how we were being treated. But the thing about it was we stood right there and we smiled the whole time. Through it all, we smiled the whole time. The judge limited. He told me that during the 5 weeks of trial, I could have no contact with them. Can you imagine 4 years you threw us together that we were on a weekly basis having contact, and you tell me for 5 weeks I could not have any contact with them? And it so happened we had a board meeting during that week. I came downstairs from the courtroom to get a drink, and Ms. Troutman, who's also one of the equipment 10, she stopped me to ask me a question that was on the agenda for the board meeting. I answered her question. By the time I got back upstairs, the judge had me stand up. Somebody had reported that I had been seen talking to Ms. Troutman. And I had to explain, it's about tonight's board meeting. You know, we have other responsibilities, but I mean, it was just that sensitive that when we left out the courtroom, they had to sit over in the gazebo. I had to leave out and not be seen with them. We would have to sneak at night in separate cars and get cars with tinted windows just because we were so used to eating out together. And we'd go out of town so we could have a meal together. Can you imagine 5 weeks of isolating me from these women that you threw me with? But it was all those little mental games they played, but we found ways around it. You know, we continue that support. And that's what it is. It's typical divide them and then you can conquer. Get them all against each other. When you can't talk to each other, you're scared to talk, and you can conquer them.
Al Sharpton, we need you. Victor Blackwell, we need you. President Barack Obama, we need you in Brooks County. We need you. Oh yes, we need you. And Eric Holder, the Justice Department, you have been given videos, and you know what it's all about.
Other places. Mayor Marianne Wiggles, just stand up and let everybody see you. She's from Gordon, Georgia. She's been going through similar themes that you heard articulated from the Equipment 10+2. And a couple of things I want to do before we go to lunch. You'll hear some more stories. Attorney C.D. King, I hope, will be here to speak on the luncheon. I know he's speaking tonight at the NAACP, but he's supposed to speak on the luncheon, and you'll hear from Judge Betty Ann Hart, who is also a state representative and a former assistant district attorney in Fulton, who's going to be working with Gabrielle. Right now, she's going to serve as our acting legal counsel, so you'll hear from her during the luncheon. And Attorney Henrietta Turnquest. These two women serve with me in the Georgia House of Representatives, and I want them to speak during the luncheon also.
I would like to tell America to take off the blinders. I would like to tell Governor Deal and any of the people up there that we elected, they need to take the blinders off and come and see what's going on in their communities. Enough is enough, and that's it. We're not taking it anymore. We're not going to take this thing down.
Commissioner Maxwell, I want you to say something before we go to George. George is going to give us an overview of the trial. But let me just say this to you. Cheryl, what I would like for you to think about, since you have so many contacts and you just have so much going on, You got all these connections. I want you to think about how we can get Ebony, Magazine, Oprah Winfrey, or Tyler Perry to take a look at the Equipment 10 movement. This story ought to be told on a broad scale. This is a movie. This is a documentary.
That's right.
This is a movie here, Herbert. The Equipment 10 plus 2 case is the most serious case of voter suppression, voter intimidation, voter harassment that I've seen since 1982.
Orchestrated from the state.
That's right, orchestrated by the state of Georgia, from the top down.
I believe that.
Not from the, see, it came from the governor. The Secretary of State, Brian Kemp. Nathan Deal suspended them. Brian Kemp had his state election board officers down here on the ground before they were charged with anything. They were part of the arrest team. When those knocks came on their door, 4 o'clock in the morning, Brian Kemp's officers wearing guns and badges were in the arrest team. Secretary of State, the one who's holding up not 40,000 votes, but 50,000 registration. It's 50,000, not 40,000 voter registration forms that they're holding up, Cheryl. This is a movie, y'all.
Yes, it is.
Rounded up, put in jail in here, 12 hours? About 12 hours?
What's 14?
14 hours? Now, you mentioned the 5-week trial, but there were 2 other trials before the 5-week trial. And they were hung juries and mistrials. So we had 3 trials. 3 trials. The last one, 5 weeks. The first 2, couldn't get a verdict, so the judge declared mistrials. Think about that. This is a movie, y'all. We mentioned media. Now, we've been interviewed by the AJC. The AJC was here on October 4th. Area Hart. She rode with us around the community in the vans. She was out in Morgan with us and came back to Cookland and went up to the McDonald's for the meeting with Attorney C.B. King. She's a phenomenal writer, Ariel Hart. She's a white woman who has a conscience. She did a piece on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on January the 20th of this year, the day we celebrated his birthday, national legal holiday. And she went through all that he went through, his whole life about Dr. King bringing us the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and what he was going through, how they were harassing him, how they were trying to burn his house down, burn his church, and what they were doing to destroy his family, Miss Coretta and the children, and all that stuff, and how the FBI was trying to destroy him while he was doing that. She wrote all of that, and they ran it on the front page. Commissioner Maxwell, I want you to say something before we go to George. George is going to give us an overview of the trial. But let me just say this to you. Cheryl, what I would like for you to think about, since you have so many contacts and you just have so much going on, you got all these connections, I want you to think about how we can get Ebony, Magazine, Oprah Winfrey, or Tyler Perry to take a look at the Equipment 10 movement. This story ought to be told on a broad scale. This is a movie. This is a documentary.
That's right.
This is a movie here, Herbert. The Equipment 10 plus 2 case is the most serious case of voter suppression, voter intimidation, voter harassment that I've seen since 1982.
Orchestrated from the state.
That's right, orchestrated by the state of Georgia, from the top down.
I believe that.
Not from the, see, it came from the governor. The Secretary of State, Brian Kemp. Nathan Deal suspended them. Brian Kemp had his state election board officers down here on the ground before they were charged with anything. They were part of the arrest team. When those knocks came on their door, 4 o'clock in the morning, Brian Kemp's officers wearing guns and badges were in the arrest team. Secretary of State, the one who's holding up not 40,000 votes, but 50,000 registration. It's 50,000, not 40,000 voter registration forms that they're holding up, Cheryl. This is a movie, y'all.
Yes, it is.
Rounded up, put in jail in here, 12 hours? About 12 hours?
What's 14?
14 hours? Now, you mentioned the 5-week trial, but there were 2 other trials trials. But for the 5-week trial, they were hung juries and mistrials. So we had 3 trials. 3 trials. The last one, 5 weeks. The first 2, couldn't get a verdict, so the judge declared mistrials. Think about that. This is a movie, y'all.
After putting 21 years in the United States Armed Forces, I got to say something. I cannot sit back and dip and play the ostrich head game. And the ostrich head duck game is when you bury your head in the sand and pretend that you're in heaven with all your backside out. And so, I'm calling on 60 Minutes. I'm calling on Dateline, 48 Hours, Eric Holder, the Justice Department. After all, Eric Holder already know about this Quitman 10 case. The Georgia Attorney General, there was a time when we could call the Attorney General. We could call the Department of Justice. We could call our Congressional Black Caucus. We could call the civil rights organizations, and they would be here. But there's something strange that's happening in our world today. It seems as if though nobody cares about anybody anymore. Yet when the time comes for them to call our sons and our daughters to serve in the armed forces in foreign nations of the world to defend the rights of others, we gladly rush off to fight these wars. But when wars such as this take place here in Brooks County, the news media don't think enough of our active duty military personnel, disabled veterans, retired military veterans, and ordinary veterans and American people. We don't care enough to at least show good faith. Even if the Quitman Free Press was not going to report it, just for facelift, they ought to be in the courtroom. If ABC didn't want to report it because they have already received their instructions, they at least ought to be here as a good face. NBC, if they have received their instructions not to cover this by some higher-ups, maybe those in the clique and among the slicks, just out of good journalism, they ought to send somebody by to cover the Quitman 10+2 case. After all, they've been waiting over 4 years to have their day in court. So we must ask the question, have we ever heard of a speedy trial in the United States of America? Have we ever heard of a speedy trial here in Brooks County? Haven't finished yet. What about Oprah Winfrey? What about, that guy named Tyler Perry? If he can put all these other movies on to stimulate our circulation and put us in a thrill and kill, why can't he send some of his reporters down? Or to at least interview somebody? Well, this is nothing new, so I'm not amazed by this. If you go back to the Kendrick Johnson case, that's still pending in Valdosta in Lowndes County. Go back to my criminal trespass that still haven't been resolved. Go to the mayor, Linda Harris in Meigs, Georgia, the black elected mayor, arrested twice under 2 criminal trespass warnings. The council walked out on her. Then from there, I was called to Dawson, Georgia. Newly elected black mayor shot 6 times and left in his front yard for dead. His neighbor came over. Today he's still in office, and I understand he's running again. Then I was called to Gordon, Georgia. Mayor ran Whippaloop. But you don't hear nothing about that on MSNBC and Al Sharpton. 60 Minutes won't talk about that. ABC won't talk about that. They'll tell you about a cat trapped in a tree or a dog that got ran over by an 18-wheeler. But when it comes down to these situations, Lumpkin, Georgia, where where Mayor Charles Gibson was called a nigger by a fellow council member, a white female. Nobody have come in. Secretary of State, Governor Nathan Deal, Georgia Attorney General Sam Olens, nobody is saying nothing about it. So all of us can't go to sleep at the wheel. All of us cannot go to sleep at the wheel. And so I have counted at least 11 cities where newly elected black mayors are catching pure heaven on the backside of hell. And yet, nobody says anything. It's getting strange, y'all.
My name is David Mond. When this situation transpired in 2010, I was in Atlanta, Georgia. And I wondered to myself, what could 12 African Americans in Quitman, Georgia be doing about voter fraud? They served the law in, 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson?
Yes.
To help us to vote.
That's right.
And this situation occurred. So fortunately, I was able to retire and come back home. So I sat in trial for those 5 weeks. The first day I was satisfied. We didn't do anything wrong. It's conspiracy. Conspiracy about taking control. Right. They don't want us in a position of authority. Right. And that's the bottom line to this whole scenario here. Right. And I sat there and I watched Ms. Smart. Tears came to my eyes because I thought about the people who died. Yes. Who died just to vote. Yes. And here we got people who are not even voting these days. It's an insult to me because I love all my people. Black and white, it doesn't matter. But when you're doing the right thing, that's important. So when I sat there for those 5 weeks, I thought, how can this be in Quitman, Georgia once again? Strong background family. Where are my people at?
Amen.
Why y'all not showing up? I understand about the working conditions.
Come on.
I'm not going to be redundant, but that situation right there kind of puzzled me as well.
Yes, it did.
I go to these Friday night football games, we all out there. We're having a good time. Yeah. But when my brothers and sisters are facing adversity, I can't find them. What are you afraid of?
That's right.
You have the same thing they have.
Amen. That's right.
They threaten me with a weapon. Hey, I have a weapon.
All right.
Believe it or permit. Not saying I'm going to do anything about that.
That's right.
But I'm not afraid of anyone. They don't need to be afraid. Understand, we are citizens just like they are.
Amen.
Not saying the white man always after us, but there's some bad folks out there who don't want to go position of authority. So it's important, folks. When you go to your family reunions, tell your people, vote. When you're having your church meetings, tell your community to vote.
Yes.
All people in authority right now, in black positions, political positions, here in Quitman, Georgia, don't just be holding positions because it's just a title. You got a brother in trouble, or you got somebody that you help him out, I need you help him out. Because I'm telling you, my 21 years in the Department of Justice, I see it every day in there. White man taking care of their own. But when a black brother want to help somebody else, we can't do that, Mr. Mom. Why not? Just to qualify that person just put in that position. So understand this, folks. This battle is never going to be over. Glory be to God. Glory be to God. C.B. King was involved. But on the flip side of the coin, she could be serving 3 years as we speak. Completing 3 years as we speak.
Absolutely.
So it's important, folks. Never give up. Don't be afraid. There's no need to be afraid. And that's my conclusion for the night, folks.
We never had some haters, but you know what, Sister Lula? One thing I want you to always remember. Always keep your 2 or 3 haters, because those haters are your elevators. Amen.
Pastor First Antioch Missionary Baptist Church in Valdosta. But your situation that you have endured in Quitman, I am well acquainted with it. I'm acquainted with your grief and your turmoil because over in Matheson, we also had 90 arrested. And, but you have distinguished yourself. Because I thought about what Jesus said. He said, if you got a light, don't put it on the bushel, but put it on a candlestick so that others may benefit. You stayed together.
Yes, sir.
Quitman 10 plus 2.
Yes, sir.
I take my hat off and tilt it 45 degrees twice. The reason I do that because you stood.
Yes, sir. Ground. Oh, yes.
The wind blew very, very hard. But you stood.
Yes, sir.
You stood together.
Yes.
Now in Matheson, we had a few to plead out because they were just so afraid going to prison. And we don't hold that against them, but we understood what was taking place. But you stood together. Yep. And I want to say to you, because you have stood together, you represent the Constitution of the United States. You represent democracy. You represent a free society. And to the 10 plus 2 and my respect shall forever be with you, especially the one that fell on the battlefield. And I'm going to get out your way, but especially the one that fell. My respect shall forever be with you, because when she passed, to me, it put a mark in the soil forever.
Amen.
And the attorney is here, but to the equipment 10 plus 2, my hats go off to you. God bless you. Continue to stand.
Amen.
Look at here. Call Al Sharpton and ask him. Call Malik Shabazz in New York. Call Ricky Smiley or Tavis Smiley. Call Victor Blackwell from CNN and ask him, do you know what's going on in Quitman? Call 60 Minutes and ask them. Somebody eventually gonna pick up on this. We are going to pray that God will open up some of these black peoples in positions of leadership, that they will be concerned about the Quitman 10 plus 2, because it is indeed time. It's time that this voting rights issue be brought to the forefront. Al Sharpton, we need you. Victor Blackwell, we need you. President Barack Obama, we need you in Brooks County. We need you. Oh yes, we need you. And Eric Holder of the Justice Department, you have been given videos and you know what it's all about. And so we're going to look and trust in our God to bring justice not only to the Quitman 10 plus 2, but for all these other people, many of them, that have perished at the hands of law enforcement. It is time now that some type of action be taken. Once again, I'm George Boss Rhyme. This is the Ghetto Free Press. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. I'd just like to say that I have supported the Quitman 10 since day one. I've known them ever since I was a little boy. Grew up down the street from a couple of them. And I knew in the beginning that this was just a scare tactic. The G.B.R, they showed up at my house and they told me some things, and I told them to do whatever they had to do because I have a lawyer.
All right.
And they told me that I may be subpoenaed, and I haven't received that subpoena until today. So I just say that we don't have to be scared anymore. We don't. There's nothing to be afraid of. There are laws that have been set in place, but if we don't take advantage of those laws, then it may as well not exist. There's a saying that I learned in the Army that a standard unchecked is a new standard set. So if the speed limit is 55, but everyone is driving 70, guess what the speed limit is? It's 70. So we have to keep ourselves in check. But that means sometimes just supporting one another, being there for them. And as Brother Christian said, we can't always be there. But we'll be there in spirit, and we'll be there with you. And I also wanted to say that without people like Equipment 10, that I wouldn't be standing here today as your mayor, Equipment Georgia. And like Joseph, I don't think he knew that he was going to be put in the pit, about to be killed by his very own brothers, you know, and then he ended up in jail and prison, and in the end he was Pharaoh's right-hand man. And God will put you in places, and like the brother said, sometimes you will be by yourself, but you won't be alone, because the Bible says that the Lord will never forsake you. We can turn our backs on the Lord, but the Lord will not turn our backs or turn his back on us. So I just do what I can. I try to be truthful, honest, and faithful, and I let the Lord handle the rest.
And I spent 20 years in the military. I spent 19 years and 5 months on the railroad, and out of all of those places, I haven't found one place that I traded for Brooks County. Not one place that I traded for Brooks County. And I loved it so much that my spot is out on Boot Hill. So when the good Lord called me home, I'll be in Brooks County.
I would like to tell America to take off the blinders. I would like to tell Governor Deal and any of the people up there that we elected, they need to take the blinders off and come and see what's going on in their communities. Enough is enough, and that's it. We're not taking it anymore. We're not going to take it
now, supposedly, I'm going to use this for an analogy. Now, supposedly, we were going into battle in Vietnam. We got 4 platoons going into that battle, and the battalion commander called all the company commanders in and said, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And the company commander don't tell his platoon leaders, the platoon sergeant, his platoon anything. He go out there, what you going to do? You're going to get wiped out. You're going to get wiped out because nobody knows what to do but you. But my point is this, let us come back and Attorney King, he spelled it out beautifully because of the fact we need some type of program to get these young fellas involved and in school.
That's right.
Now, back in my day, we didn't have the opportunity to go to school. Because the man came by and said, T, I want them boys to do this and do that. They boys went to school. But we went to work.
Right.
See? But now, you don't have that opportunity now. And I tell them now, and back in them days, if you didn't do what he wanted done, well, you get your little not much and get off of my property. See, but it ain't like that now. They got better houses now in the government for you to live in than Mr. Charlie got.
That's right.
So why are you afraid? Shouldn't be afraid. Hey, oh, my man. Hey, you got to come on. Oh, he got it. I won't tell you. But I want us to really consider this now. And like I said, I'm a migrant to Brooks County. And so far as I'm concerned, Brooks County is my home. And I plan to be here until the good Lord called me home. And I want us to come together. Unite ourselves together. That's how you win the battle.
That's right.
You can't win the battle divided.
That's it.
And I admire Equipment 10 for staying together. And every time I would talk to somebody, that was one of the things I would tell them. Regardless of what the circumstances might be, stay together. And if one fall, we all fall. Don't fall alone. And whatever goes on in Brooks County, there's a lot that can happen in Brooks County. That is provided if we get up and do something. If we get up and do something, apply ourselves. Don't expect the man to hand you everything on the platter. Apply yourself.
There you go. Amen.
There's so much out there that you go, and education is one of the greatest things. I didn't go nowhere but to the 9th grade. The little school I went to over there in Lindale County, they didn't go no further than 9th grade. They had to go to Lowndes County to get to 12th grade. But nevertheless, I went in the Army, and Uncle Sam said, well, you can get your GED in here. So, okay, I got it. But nevertheless, the good Lord guided me right on through. The good Lord took care of everything. And so we want you all to know that. And I'm real proud of it. And we do want you to come and be a part of this movement. This is a movement. We didn't just make this one step and we're going to stop here. We're going to continue to move until we get what we desire or what we're entitled to in Brooks County. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
After 21 years in the United States Armed Forces, I got to say something. I I cannot sit back and dip and play the ostrich head game. And the ostrich head duck game is when you bury your head in the sand and pretend that you're in heaven with all your backside out. And so, I'm calling on 60 Minutes. I'm calling on Dateline, 48 Hours, Eric Holder, the Justice Department. After all, Eric Holder already know about this Quitman 10 case. The Georgia Attorney General, there was a time when we could call the Attorney General. We could call the Department of Justice. We could call our Congressional Black Caucus. We could call the civil rights organizations, and they would be here. But there's something strange that's happening in our world today. It seems as if though nobody cares about anybody anymore. Yet when the time comes for them to call our sons and our daughters to serve in the armed forces in foreign nations of the world to defend the rights of others, we gladly rush off to fight these wars. But when wars such as this take place here in Brooks County, the news media don't think enough of our active duty military personnel, disabled veterans, retired military veterans, and ordinary veterans and American people. We don't care enough to at least show good faith. Even if the Quitman Free Press was not going to report it, just for facelift, they ought to be in the courtroom. If ABC didn't want to report it because they have already received their instructions, they at least ought to be here as a good face. NBC, if they have received their instructions not to cover this by some higher-ups, maybe those in the clique and among the slicks, just out of good journalism, they ought to send somebody by to cover the Quitman 10+2 case. After all, they've been waiting over 4 years to have their day in court. So we must ask the question, have we ever heard of a speedy trial in the United States of America? Have we ever heard of a speedy trial here in Brooks County? Haven't finished yet. What about Oprah Winfrey? What about, what that guy named, Tyler Perry? If he can put all these other movies on to stimulate our circulation and put us in a thrill and kill, why can't he send some of his reporters down? Or to at least interview somebody? Well, this is nothing new, so I'm not amazed by this. If you go back to the Kendrick Johnson case, that's still pending in Valdosta in Lowndes County. Go back to my criminal trespass that still haven't been resolved. Go to the mayor, Linda Harris in Meigs, Georgia, the black elected mayor, arrested twice under 2 criminal trespass warnings. The council walked out on her. Then from there, I was called to Dawson, Georgia. Newly elected black mayor shot 6 times and left in his front yard for dead. His neighbor came over. Today he's still in office, and I understand he's running again. Then I was called to Gordon, Georgia. Mayor ran Whippaloop. But you don't hear nothing about that on MSNBC and Al Sharpton. 60 Minutes won't talk about that. ABC won't talk about that. They'll tell you about a cat trapped in a tree or a dog that got ran over by an 18-wheeler. But when it comes down to these situations, Lumpkin, Georgia, where Mayor Charles Gibson was called a nigger by a fellow council member, a white female. Nobody have come in. Secretary of State, Governor Nathan Deal, Georgia Attorney General Sam Olens, nobody is saying nothing about it. So all of us can't go to sleep at the wheel. All of us cannot go to sleep at the wheel. And so I have counted at least 11 cities where newly elected black mayors are catching pure heaven on the backside of hell. And yet, nobody says anything. It is getting strange, y'all.
First of all, I'd like to say that we commend the Quitman 10+2 for the way they handle themselves during this time. The thing about it that was so beautiful is that it was all of us.
Yeah.
And we had a wonderful team. Sister Lula Smart, Nancy Denner, Mrs. Simmons from Atlanta, and Attorney King. They made those people look like amateurs.
Yes.
Amen.
Woo! I want to give you a little background, but I'm so thankful to the Quitman 10+2 that they did not take a plea bargain.
Amen.
Amen. If they had been convicted of one crime, that would have been a felony on their records, and they would have been messed up for life. My prayer to God was total exoneration, innocent on all counts, and God brought us through.
Sure did.
I want to give you a little background. On December 2010, 10 citizens of Quitman, Georgia were arrested and accused of voter fraud. These citizens was arrested, unceremoniously put in orange jumpsuits, their names splattered all over the newspaper, the television, the radio, and this was only an indictment. An indictment is only an accusation. But yet these citizens were presumed guilty before there was even a trial. Amen. And we must understand that every citizen is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. When they was arrested, we thank God for the community that came together. And the first meeting was held at Bethel AME Church. We thank God for Bethel for opening their doors. I was a pastor there. We also like to thank our good friend Floyd Rose. Stand up. God always have people in place when you need them the most.
Amen.
He is a stalwart in the civil rights movement. He knew what to do. He even named the Quitman 10. Amen. He showed us how to get this movement organized. And we thank God for him. He's from the SCLC. Amen. We thank God for them and Tyrone Brooks coming down and helping us. Also, during this movement, the NAACP was started here. And that was to, there might be future cases that might come up, and we'll have an organization in place to make sure we can handle this situation. Now, the United States Constitution guarantees each person equal protection under the law. The United States Constitution guarantees that every person of our nation is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The rights of these citizens were violated. Amen.
Yes, sir.
And what angers me so is the fact that Sister Latasha Head died with these accusations hanging over her head.
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
yet there are still, with her, 11 people that still have to be tried. This case has been going on for 4 years.
Sir.
Now, you have to understand one thing. And that is, every person is entitled to a speedy trial. Their rights was violated. Now, why did it take over 4 years to bring these people to justice? It's because they didn't have a case.
Right.
Amen.
That's right.
They didn't have a case. They were hoping that they would take the plea. But when they didn't do that, they had to prove their case. And if you were in the courtroom,
That's right.
you would have seen one of the biggest fiascos you ever wanted to see in your life.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Oh, yes.
The witnesses lied on the stand.
Yes.
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation lied on the stand.
That's right.
Yes.
Falsified documents.
That's right.
Yes.
The Secretary of State lied on the stand.
Yes.
Boone from the post office, who started this whole mess, lied on the stand.
Yes.
All to try to make these citizens look guilty.
That's right.
My Lord.
But thank God that we have a God who sits high.
Come on now.
and he
Yes,
looks
sir.
down.
That's right.
Yes, Lord. Yes,
Lord.
Lord.
That's right.
The sad thing about this case is Governor Deal, who's the leader of the state of Georgia, left the state capital to come down here and suspend people who were elected to the school board.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
This election was certified
Yes, sir.
and without due process of law.
That's right.
Every person is entitled to due process of law.
Yes.
That's right.
But he's put it upon himself to suspend Dr. Nancy Danner, who has a doctor's degree.
Yes, sir.
Sister Diane Thomas, who has a master's degree.
Earned.
And
Yes.
Sister Linda Troutman.
Yes, Lord.
They treated us like, you got to excuse me for saying us, because I was just as angry as they were.
That's right. That's right.
Every citizen in Brooks County should have been angry
Upset.
Come on now.
Yes, sir.
for the way they treated our citizens.
Yes,
That's right.
sir.
But yet many people didn't get involved because, number one, you thought they was guilty because the white man said they were.
Woo! There it is! Woo! Woo! There it is!
Come on now. Ooh, there it is.
That's all right.
That's it. And you're scared.
Come on now. That's it. That's it.
My question is, how are you going to get the horse back into the barn?
Yes, he is.
That's right.
These people's names have been tarnished, their reputation besmirched. They have been talked about, accused of different things. And now they are proven innocent. How are you going to get the horse back in the... How will you restore these people good name and reputation? How are we going to do that? We need to look at that and see what we can do to help them restore their good name. One thing that most people didn't understand, and I'm getting ready to close, were that when the G.B.R, the Secretary of State, canvassed the community, they tried to strike fear in the heart of the black community.
Woo! Yes, sir! Yes, sir! Yes, sir!
They didn't want you to vote.
That's right.
They especially didn't want you to vote absentee because those absentee ballots can be accounted for.
Yes, sir. Paper
That's
trail.
right. Paper
This
trail.
trial proved that there was corruption downtown.
That's right.
If it wasn't for the absentee ballots, it never would have been uncovered.
That's right.
Many people don't understand that when those incumbents were declared the winner that night and woke up and had lost the election that next day, it's because they didn't intend to count the absentee ballot.
That's right. That's right.
But God prevailed. Amen.
Amen.
The prosecution changed the wording on the ballots to prosecute Lula Smart. The language was not there in 2010. They changed it.
My Lord, my Lord.
That's right.
On the ballot to make it look like she was guilty. The prosecution suppressed evidence.
Yes, sir.
They hid evidence.
Show they did. I'm a witness.
Amen. Show them. Speak it. Tell the truth.
I believe that we ought to demand, as concerned citizens,
Yes.
that they drop the charges on every remaining member. What's so amazing is that Sister Dana and all of the workers on the poll had been trained.
Yes.
They knew what to do. But yet they tried to make it look like they were incompetent. But God prevailed.
Amen.
Few of the fallacies of this trial, and then I'm going to sit down. And I don't know about you, but I got angry when I looked. I didn't even vote absentee ballot that time. And here come the G.B.R. and the Secretary of State knocking on my door.
Wow.
Wow.
But one thing that happened that most people don't understand is that you all shut them down.
Amen.
Amen.
You all shut them down. When you told them that we're not going to answer your question, we voted who we wanted to vote for, I did what I wanted to do, get out of my yard. We don't have to be afraid no longer.
All right. Amen.
It's so much I could go on, but I'm going to
tell the story.
Jesus.
I'm going to yield, but there were so many fallacies. And I hope and pray that we all learn a lesson from this.
Yes.
That we're not going to let anybody come in our community and disrespect our people. These were the leading citizens of our community that they went after.
Amen.
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 If the head falls, the body, you kill the head, the body gonna die. But see, they didn't know Nancy Denham, and Lula, and Diane, Miss Sharpman, and they didn't know.
They didn't know.
But I knew from the beginning, and that they were innocent from the start. I don't know about you, but I grew up in the 50s. I was born in 1952. Amen.
Amen.
And I know the tactics of the other man. They'll do anything to win.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
But I want to say to you and to all of the people who prayed and supported the Quitman team. I know some of you wanted to be there, but you had to work. I know some of you could have been there, but you chose not to. But thank you for your prayers. Thank you for just putting them up before God.
Amen.
and allowing God to use them. Whether you know it or not, God used them.
Yes. Yes, he did. Yes.
There was a gentleman that called me from San Francisco, and he said, "What in the world are y'all doing out there?" He got on our organization, NAACP, because they didn't come here. I'm angry because the president of the NAACP didn't show his face.
Tell it.
And I'm angry.
Tell it.
Now he writing all kind of articles. Want the equipment 10 plus 2 to come up there and talk. Where was he when they needed him the most? And that's a little bit of the history, and I'm going to close with this. The Get Out the Vote campaign of the Equipment 10 plus those who helped was the most brilliant campaign I have seen in my life. People voted who had never voted before in their life.
Amen.
People who couldn't make it to the poll. And they got beat at their own game.
Come on now. That's right.
Amen.
Amen.
It was a brilliant campaign. It was well planned, well organized. And many other communities are looking at what the Equipment 10 plus 2 did. And they're doing the same thing in their communities.
Of course.
So we say Equipment 10 plus 2, don't stop doing what you're doing.
Right now.
We got we're fast getting a new council. I told one of the white gentlemen that he was wondering how did the mayor get beat. And I told him that everybody who touched Equipment 10, we
Look
were
out,
going
man.
after.
Look out! Look out!
Amen. I don't know about y'all, but you ain't gonna mess with no.
I deeply appreciate the expression that you just shared with me. I apologize, number one, for running behind schedule. Had some transportation issues to arise. But coming here was always on my mind. I can't express to you enough how appreciative I am to have had the opportunity to be involved in a movement, one that, quite honestly, rarely occurs these days. You know, I said to, I believe it was Nancy Dennard, that the lesson that was taught here in Whitman is a lesson that people in Ferguson, Missouri could have learned from.
Yes, sir.
This was a monumental event. I don't think that people may have realized just how big an accomplishment this was. I think that you sometimes confuse the size of the community with the size and the enormity of the accomplishment. So, you know, I really want to stress to you that this, in fact, was a victory. It was a victory for people more than just Lula Smart.
Amen. Amen.
It was a victory for us all. Now, I would be derelict in failing to give recognition where recognition is due. These 12 individuals that have been called the Whitman 10+2 are a very special group of people and very special to me. I've been practicing law for the better part of 33 years now, and I can't tell you of a time when I've had greater pride in representing a client, let alone 12.
Amen. Amen.
I'm talking about people who, when I would come here and we would meet over at a storefront location near town, and people would have organized themselves and would have, organized themselves in a sense that it didn't seem as though it took a lot of effort on their part to realize their purpose and the resolve that they had during the entire time that we were talking about, well, what was going on, the fact that the arrest had taken place, and then also the fact that people had been indicted, and it was clear that we were on a path to trial. I don't think that there was ever a moment in which anybody questioned where we were headed. And there was no discussion about entering into any compromise, any plea agreement, or anything of that sort. I think that that was the furthest thing from anyone's mind. And I would not be 100% truthful with you if I didn't say that as a lawyer, you're always concerned about the recommendations that you make to people. That, you know, whatever you make as a recommendation, people are going to rely upon it. And it may be a life-changing moment for them.
Yes.
And so I felt that weight from time to time, but I can honestly say that they made it a lot easier to handle than what it could have been. Now, I'm only going to make some brief remarks, and I understand people have already gotten up before me and may have said many of the things that I would want to say to you. But this is only one step in the process. This is a moment when we can see what we can do.
Yes.
That it's not about theory, that it's not about some lofty ideal or something that we could, quote unquote, wish for. We can make it happen.
Yes.
Now, we still have a number of people who've not yet gone to trial. And quite frankly, I don't know what the prosecution is thinking about. But I can promise you this, that the same kind of vigor, the same kind of effort, the same kind of commitment that went into this first trial will see us through to the last. Now, I'd like to make one other comment, and that is that I think that we ought to be putting together a Christmas list of things we want to see happen in this community. I think that those who are not with us, those who would oppose us, those who have an interest in delivering services and benefits to one part of the community and not to the entire community, those individuals are not going to change their ways. They may have backed down for a minute, but in 500 years, it has not changed, and I have no reason to believe it's going to change now. And while we have them on their heels, it would be foolish on our parts to simply take our foot off the gas. I think that if we're going to take advantage of this energy that we've got going, this momentum, then we need to be putting it together in some constructive way. We need to come up with an agenda. We need to look throughout our community and figure out what are our needs. What would we like to see happen? Because there is nobody more in need than us.
Amen.
Some of the things that, cross my mind is, the kind of education that our kids are getting.
Yes.
They know about everybody else except themselves.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And when a person does not know who he is, does not embrace who he is, and does not hope and dream for what he can be, that individual's lost. And more importantly, he's lost from us. This is our future. So, I think that there's some things that maybe could be done to the way in which our children are taught, the kind of curriculum that they are fed, and programs to address a lot of issues that we have with self-esteem, being goal-oriented, having a vision about what it is that life can offer. That is one thing that maybe we can do. I mean, you've got, according to the census report, only 35% of the population in this county. White folks constitute some 62% or thereabouts. I imagine if you count Hispanics and so forth. But you've got way more muscle than any 35%. And what we have to do is to bring that muscle into action and get it focused on certain goals and objectives. We need a drug court in every community. This business of our kids having to go to school and it be a pipeline to the jailhouse. That's a drain on our resources. That's burdening our community with more problems. And we can go about setting up programs that are designed to eliminate problems in our community. For any problem that we have, we can come up with a program to set it right. And of course, in addition to the impact that you can have on your school board, I mean, I looked at a website as I came down the road at the accomplishments of this school board since 2010. It's a very, very long list of accomplishments. You know. And we can improve upon that. And in addition to that, one of the ways in which we can improve upon making these programs work is to get certain people out of the way.
Right.
Now, you've got a district attorney in this circuit who needs to go. You've got other individuals in this community who consider themselves privileged. And they need to be shown that they are no better than anybody else.
Amen.
Amen, brother.
We had people take the witness stand, take an oath to tell the truth, and they lied their butts off. And we should make it a point to let them know that we won't tolerate this kind of abuse, and that when we say we're going to do something, we're going to do it.
All right. All right.
Again, I just want to say to each and every one of you that Brooks County has gained the attention of the entire state of Georgia, and I would say from some of the coverage we've received, it's really the country.
Amen. Yes, it is. It is. Yes, it is.
People are interested in finding out what is it that people do or did down here to make what was most unlikely to occur.
Yes, sir.
And I think that since we've got the attention of many who live outside this community, we should do everything within our power to push this ball further down the field. We have a lot of things, a lot of improvements that need to be made in this community, and if people continue to watch this community, we can't simply show them what we did in the past. We have to show them what we're going to do. Okay? We're going to show them exactly what it is to have control of our own destiny. Thank you so much. I say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to the Quitman 10+2. It is an indescribable moment for me, and I may live in Albany, but I am here in Quitman.
Let's do our parts, make history, become a part of history. We don't blame you if you had misinformation at the beginning of the Quitman 10+2 saga. You had misinformation. And you said, well, they must have done something. Listen. Never ever in my million years that I think they were guilty of anything. Never. Because I know we had taught them. We taught them to be honest. You walking down the hall, you find a dollar bill. They will go into that office and turn that dollar in. So look, Billy, I found this. It's not mine. Because we taught them that. They weren't going to do what was wrong. They were going to vote and support us. So, I'm here. I ain't going nowhere. I'm with you. I am with you. I am with you. Every step of the way. Where you from?